Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Monday edition of the show. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend as we get back into the swing of things on this Monday episode. Bucs are rocking and rolling, trying to figure out their 53-man roster. There's been a number of roster cuts already and more to go. So we will be further discussing which Bucs should make this 53-man roster and also react to a number of roster cuts that were already made. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is the face that runs the place at pewterreport.com. It is SR Scott Reynolds. And Scott, I don't think anything too crazy surprising just happened just yet for the Buccaneers, but they are getting closer to figuring out that 53-man roster.
Yeah, it was quite busy yesterday. Pewter Report and Greg Allman were kind of at the heart of most of those roster cuts. Greg always shines this time of year, calling all the agents and getting those names. And so let's just kind of jump into it right here. These are the names, and Greg listed 5 new ones today that we can confirm. But here are the roster cuts so far. The names in black down there at the bottom are Raheem Jarrett and Chase Edmonds, expected to go on injured reserve. But we have seen now a pretty healthy amount of roster cuts. Ramon Jefferson, the running back, Tanner Canoe, Latrell Jones, Raleigh Webb, Cephas Johnson, Sterling Shepard. Those are the wide receivers and running back. And we think DJ Williams will probably be among those names released as well. And then tight end David Wells, tight end Sal Cannella, offensive lineman Ryan Johnson, Xavier Delgado, defensive lineman Judge Culpepper, Mike Green. Maybe the biggest surprise so far, CJ Brewer, although it looks like right now Ernest Brown is going to be getting the roster spot along with Will Golston. Brandon Matterson, who's one of the newer guys that came in to replace Eric Banks. They kind of switched out defensive linemen last week. Kalen DeLoach, the inside linebacker at Florida State, just didn't really make that strong of an impression, either on special teams or defense. Outside linebackers Jay Person and Sean Peterson and Daniel Griesiak. And cornerbacks Andrew Hayes, Chris McDonald, punter Nolan Cooney, although he might be back in the practice squad, and Zach Triner. Those are the names right there. Maybe the biggest surprise, and I actually had Evan Deckers, the long snapper, making my 53 on my SR's Fab 5, is the switch out at long snapper because they've had Zach Triner as a long snapper for the longest time now, going back to the Super Bowl. So Evan Deckers, who played at Duke with Graham Barton, will be the new long snapper for the Buccaneers, Matt.
Yeah, that came as a little bit of a surprise. By the way, there is just a new announcement as well. The Bucs are waiving Marcus Banks, the safety in the secondary for the Bucs. So he was one of those guys kind of lobbying for one of those defensive back spots. But yeah, I guess Deckers over Triner was a little surprising, really, for everything that you said, that Decker had been there for over 5 seasons, dealt with a little bit of an injury history as far as long snappers go in the NFL, which kind of, put the Bucs' attention onto Deckers in the first place. But yeah, for a guy that's been there for several years, I believe he's 33 now.
Yeah. So
they went with a younger guy in Deckers. It makes sense. Younger and cheaper in that situation. But I hadn't noticed anything from either long snapper, anything too good or too bad. So, hey, it makes financial sense. It's the right move for the Buccaneers. So, yeah, I guess that became like one of the most surprising ones. But, even some of the other names that you listed, we had conversations about a number of them about maybe being on the practice squad, and so be it. But, yeah, I think Deckers kind of takes the cake as the most surprising one to make the team, with Triner not.
Yeah, and I think too, when you look at the show today, it's the Bucs who should make the 53, and so far, Matt, we're perfect in all of our selections in terms of who we thought was going to make the team, and I thought CJ Brewer was going to be kind of a tough, I thought he had a chance of making it. I really did, and Brewer had I thought a really good preseason. Ernest Brown, also, who came over from the Rams, had a very good preseason showing, and just about had a forced fumble, sack fumble. This was actually an incomplete pass, but it came on fourth down as he was getting held, as you can see in this picture. But this was certainly a very kind of spirited, you know.
Oh, looks like we lost Scott there for a second, so I will continue the show as we wait for Scott to reconnect to the internet. That's how this goes sometimes. But by the way, we actually got a super chat. So you know our rule: if you super chat us, we are happy to get to it as quickly as we can. Thanks to Meets McGee for this $2 super chat, who says, "I got my Celsius Galaxy Vibe in hand. I'm ready." Thank you so much for that $2 super chat, Meets McGee. That is very kind of you, and of course, a fantastic flavor with the Celsius Galaxy Vibe. Scott, I think we got you back.
Yep, we do. And yeah, so it's getting ready to storm up here in Wesley Chapel. Yeah, appreciate the Tiller super chat from Meets McGee. And yeah, Marcus Banks, who I thought had a pretty good preseason as well at the safety position. He was the guy that just about ended the life of Malik Washington on Saturday night, or
Right.
Friday night, I should say. Big time hit from Banks, and there's a chance you could see him back in the practice squad. He was one of the players that really kind of buzzed during camp in the preseason. And Matt, it's a sign of a good team when you're cutting good players. And I think Marcus Banks is a good player who can stick around the NFL and maybe in Tampa be one of those guys. I think this is a very good sign for Christian Izien to make the team, because this was not a great camp for Izien. He lost his starting job to Tykee Smith as the nickelback. It was essentially going to be that backup free safety, and then a guy that's in the mix along with Tavierre Thomas to back up the nickel spot. So there's some position flexibility. And I think maybe that's where Banks, who's more of just a pure safety, kind of got edged out a little bit by Izien. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say Banks and although different position, CJ Brewer were probably the most curious roster cuts, because I think they had a good chance of making it. Banks obviously had that forced fumble, if I'm not mistaken, against the Jaguars when we were in Jacksonville a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, and then had that monster hit. But I was always kind of confused with the whole Izien situation, because yes, he has been surpassed by Tykee Smith, and even Tavierre Thomas has been getting a lot more reps in that area of the nickel and the slot that Izien played last year. So it looks like Izien is kind of destined to just back up the main safeties with Antoine Winfield and Jordan Whitehead. But the reason why I say it's a little confusing, because he was practicing for the majority of training camp up until the Jaguars game, and then didn't play in the Jaguars game, which kind of led me to believe oh, well, if the Bucs aren't dressing him, obviously his spot's not guaranteed, but for a guy that's quote unquote on the bubble, wouldn't he be playing in this type of game? And then, all of last week up until Miami, he didn't participate either. Todd Bowles said that he's just sore. So it was a little confusing of okay, was it an injury that's actually holding him back? Was it just the Bucs not wanting him to play in that second game, and then he got hurt at some time between the last Jacksonville practice and the preseason game itself? But with all that said, I like that Izien made this team. I think he's got a lot of great energy and effort, and I think Bowles is a fan of him overall, even though Bowles understands that Tykee Smith is a much better fit in this defense than Christian Izien is. And I think Izien can still kind of help out in a number of ways, whether it's replacing injured guys or maybe has a role on special teams moving forward. So tough decisions to make, like you said. Obviously, when the Bucs are cutting good players, it's always a tough decision, but it's a good situation to be in. And I think it's great for Izien. I still think he's got a lot to prove.
Yeah, exactly. Redfish, $4.99 super chat. You guys know the rules. This show comes to a complete screeching halt when you guys super chat us. So this is what Mark Fisher had to say. Was surprised Friday with your words on Keenan Isaac, but I respect him, the cornerback. Do you feel he helped himself, if only for the practice squad? Sad that offensive tackle Luke Haggard slipped. Well, I mean, Haggard's still on the roster as of right now, unless something has changed in the last couple of seconds here. but I believe that he is a player that's in contention for making this 53-man roster, or at least the practice squad. They do like him. I think at the very least he is going to be on the practice squad. He shows some great versatility, can play guard. He was the highest graded PFF player in that Bengals game, and then got hurt and missed the last game, or the Jacksonville game. And he can also play right tackle as well. It's going to come down to, I think, Brandon Walton or Luke Haggard there, I believe, because both those guys have some position flexibility. And even Elijah Klein can play some right tackle, as we saw in a pinch.
As we learned.
Yeah. So with Keenan Isaac, this might seem like a surprise if you missed our Pewter Insider, which means you're not a Pewter Platinum or a Pewter Premier member. We'll let you know what we talked about on Friday, which is we didn't think that Keenan Isaac, unless he had a phenomenal game, which I don't think he did, is necessarily going to make this team. The team does like Josh Hayes in terms of special teams ability. He's a better tackler. He's tougher. It doesn't necessarily mean they're done with Isaac. He could wind up on the practice squad, but he doesn't play special teams as well as Josh Hayes. And again, when you're a reserve player, you need to be able to produce on special teams. That means you better be able to tackle. And that's not the strongest suit of Keenan Isaac. He's a good coverage player, but just really kind of struggles in that area.
Yeah, because when we learned that information, I was kind of like, what? Like, Keenan Isaac has looked good. And if we were discussing and having an argument or a conversation of who's the better, specifically just corner or defensive back, I still think the answer is Keenan Isaac, because not even from the interception standpoint that he got in that game against the Bengals, I think Isaac brings more to the table as a cover corner than Josh Hayes does. But
I agree.
Again, Isaac Hayes, RIP to that singer from back in the day, between Isaac and Hayes,
hello, baby.
But like, none of them are really going to be playing on defense unless there's a drastic number of injuries. Because even at this point, between Dean and Zion McCollum, you still have Bryce Hall there. Funderburk, we'll see if he makes the team, but if he gets healthy, it seems like he would be slotted in to get there more. So what becomes the tiebreaker is special teams, and Josh Hayes did really well in that role last season, is kind of to continue to chug along in that aspect of it. We got another super chat to get to. Thanks to Paul Bowen for this $1.99 super chat. I got Rachaad White on both of my fantasy teams yesterday.
Good.
Very, very cool. I hope you're in a PPR league. That means point per reception for those that may not know, because he's going to catch a lot of footballs this year. And I know specifically John Spytek was talking about this with Bucky Irving when we had John Spytek on the show on Thursday. But one thing he loved about Bucky Irving is that you don't have to worry about throwing him the football. And there's so many extra yards that the running backs will get in this offense just from, the defense worrying about everybody else. I think the same goes for Rachaad White specifically, who proved he can do it last season. And it's only going to be better this time around.
Yeah. Paul Bowen says, yes, PPR. So there you go.
Awesome.
That's good.
Got another super chat. Thank you to Q's44, the number one Sean Tucker fan in the world.
Yes.
Thank you for this $5 super chat. Who says, good luck this year, guys. Best Bucs ever. Doug Williams and Warren Sapp. Go number 44. Tuck looking good. Well, he certainly looks like he's going to make this team, especially with Chase Edmonds expected to go on IR. So by de facto, that means Sean Tucker is RB3 for the Bucs this year.
Yeah, I think he deserves it. He's come around in terms of pass protection, but man, he can catch the ball out of the backfield now. He's had some catches that have been away from his body. Even that was a 27-yard screen pass that he caught.
Yes.
Against the Dolphins. I mean, that was a nice snag and go right there for Tucker. And I think if he continues to work on the pass protection and earn the coach's trust, Skip Pete, Liam Cohen, Baker Mayfield, right? Got to be able to count on that running back when he's in the game to be able to pass protect in case Baker has to audible and keep him in, right? That's the thing. So I think as long as he does that, he is more comfortable in the NFL after missing all of last offseason in his first year in the NFL with a heart condition, and then was kind of rushed into action in training camp and flashed a little bit, but then it just got a little too big for him. And I think this year the game slowed down. He's making some great decisions with the football. You saw that with the healthy average during the preseason. I'm excited for what he can do, and Bucky Irving too. I mean, I think this Buccaneer running back stable 1, 2, 3 now is as good as I can remember it being. I mean, you have to go back to Warwick Dunn and Mike Allstott to really have a 1-2 punch that I think that Rachaad White and Bucky Irving are going to bring to the table here. And then Sean Tucker's no slouch at number 3. Usually there's that drop off right to number 3. I think Sean Tucker just brings a different dimension with that speed that he can be used situationally. I mean, he could have 5 or 6, reps in a game and come away with 50 yards, right? With a 25-yard screen, then a 25-yard run in just a few amount of touches. So I like that big play dynamic he brings to the table.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Scott, that this is one of the best running back rooms that Tampa Bay has had in a while, specifically if Sean Tucker kind of takes the step forward that we've seen so far. And I can see each game, like even against Washington in 13 days, as we know from Bucs Vault, that, Sean Tucker is pretty much going to get the same amount of rushing attempts that Chase Edmonds got the year before, where it's sprinkled in here and there. But it wouldn't even shock me if the Bucs get to red zone and goal line. It's a little bit of a roulette. One drive, it's Rachaad White. The next drive, it's Bucky Irving. And who knows, maybe Sean Tucker, sorry, Paul Bowen, because I know you just said you got Rachaad White, but I wouldn't be surprised if Sean Tucker vultures one goal line carry, or Bucky Irving obviously, cuts into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bucs are going to have options. I think that's really important because although Rachaad White was very healthy last season, you just don't see that with running backs year in and year out. So depth-wise, and I think it's no surprise when I asked John Spytek about what's the most underrated position, the first thing he said was, I like our Bucs running back room for those 3 guys. And then he went on to mention another position as well, which you could check out the podcast if you want to get that answer. But so a lot of excitement about the running back room. Let's get to this next. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, what I liked about that opening drive was not just the fact that they averaged 10 yards a pop, right? 7 plays, 70 yards, marching downfield. It only had 1 third down, which is a 3rd and 1. They picked it up. Very efficient drive. Baker Mayfield 3 of 3 for 54 yards. But I like the fact that they scored the touchdown in the first drive. That was important. But more importantly, Rachaad White got the touchdown. And now we've seen a couple of red zone touchdowns from the Buccaneers where that was a little bit harder to come by in years past. Certainly, Byron Leftwich did not like to run the ball inside the 5-yard line, which was kind of maddening. We saw a little bit more with Dave Canales last year because Rachaad did have 6 rushing touchdowns, but we saw the Bucky Irving touchdown in Cincinnati, right? We saw the touchdown to Rachaad White, which was inside the 5-yard line as well. So I like the fact that this is a team now that is complete enough with the offensive line revamped and the running back stable they have guys that can literally punch it into the end zone from the goal line situation from 5 yards and in.
Let's get to this super chat from Hezo813. We have to get to roll call as well. So we're going to be a little fashionably late because we're going to answer a super chat. So thank you to Hezo813 for this $5 super chat. It says, SR and Matt, can you see Tykee Smith being better than Brian Branch, who obviously played at Alabama and was drafted by the Lions last year? Really wanted us to draft him last year.
Yeah, I love Brian Branch. I've been a Brian Branch fan since he destroyed my Kansas State Wildcats in the Sugar Bowl 2 years ago. And really, he was a one-man gang, Brian Branch was. And then you go to his first NFL game, which I think he had a pick 6 of Patrick Mahomes. That helped the Lions upset the Chiefs in Arrowhead in the season opener last year on Thursday Night Football to start the season. That doesn't happen very often when the Chiefs lose at Arrowhead, much less. But then when they lose in the fashion that they did on Thursday night to open the season to the Lions, and that really propelled the Lions. I think with Tykee Smith, I think he's going to have a similar impact as a rookie, but a different kind of player. I think Brian Branch is more of like a box type player. And I think that Tykee Smith has a little bit more range, but they're both playmakers. They both find the ball. The one thing we didn't see Tykee Smith do, we saw a lot of pass breakups from him. We haven't seen the interceptions, and I think that's coming because he was a ball hawk. He had 4 picks last year at Georgia. I think that's coming. We know he can blitz. We know that he can, come off the edge and harass the quarterback. We saw plenty of that in training camp in the preseason. But, I think he's going to have a similar type of impact as Brian Branch, Matt. I really do.
And I think what kind of might be the tiebreaker to this question of like if you're taking Tykee or Ryan Branch is Todd Bowles, because
Yeah.
Todd Bowles obviously loves using defensive backs in many different ways. And I've said it with Tykee Smith, although he hasn't had the big interception yet.
Yeah.
I think,
It's
as they
coming.
say, turnovers comes in bunches.
Yeah.
It's going to happen specifically for him. Like once he gets a taste of one
Yep.
interception, more and more are going to come. He's going to jump routes and anticipate things in a responsible way, not obviously getting too out of control, and the blitzes and everything he can do. So, yeah, I think he can be better than Brian Branch as a rookie, thanks to Todd Bowles moving him all across the field and doing very different stuff.
You know, Matt, we have got our fans, our Pewter people, so well trained that on Mondays at 4:20, we do this thing that's fun, that's interactive, that we really show our love and our appreciation for the fans. It's a little thing that we have tabbed roll call.
That's right. It's time for roll call. We do this every Monday show or the first show of the week, where we love interacting with our Bucs fans, our Pewter people, as much as we possibly can. So we do this fun thing called roll call, where one of us starts talking about the Bucs in a little diatribe or whatever you will. And in the meantime, because we have great fans all over the place, we will put up on the screen where you're watching the show from and give some specific shout outs after.
Yeah.
So, Scott,
they've already started. I've got a little rant today to go on. They've already started. You guys are well trained. We love it. So Matt is going to put up where you are watching or listening to the podcast from. And I'm going to talk about one of my favorite Buccaneers. And we're not supposed to have favorites, but, you know, Will Golston is one of my favorites. He just is. And at age 33, he has made the team this year again, or so it seems. It looks like with the release of CJ Brewer, this team will keep Ernest Brown and Will Golston as the defensive lineman. Now, I'm saying this without any inside knowledge that they are keeping Will Golston, but it certainly seems that they're going to do that. They have historically kept 6 defensive linemen, and right now, when you look at the depth chart, you've got Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey, Logan Hall, Greg Gaines as the top 4. That leaves spots for 2 reserves, with Mike Green being released along with CJ Brewer and Lawal Yugiak. The 2 guys left are Will Golston and Ernest Brown, the newcomer from the Rams. And Will Golston, I think, deserves a spot on this team for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's a glue guy. He has the ability to talk to young players. He is an experienced veteran. He is one of the few Super Bowl guys left on this team. And at age 33, he can still play. He can still cause some havoc out there. He's a player that you probably want to use situationally. But you know what? He has the trust of Todd Bowles and Casey Rogers, the defensive line coach, because he's been in this system since 2019. He's been in Tampa Bay since, 2013. So he knows how to play defensive line any of the spots. He could go in at nose in a pinch. He could play the 3-tech in a pinch. His best spot is that 4-eye defensive end type role that Logan Hall kind of plays. But his situational versatility is critical. And again, it's the trust that Todd Bowles, Casey Rogers have. And, you know, there's a couple of guys that are just sentimental to Jason Light. And Levante Davis is one of those guys. Mike Evans is one of those guys. And Will Golston is one of those guys. Those were the 3 OGs on this Buccaneer team that wound up winning the Super Bowl, and it just was a little bit extra special for those guys because they had been in Tampa Bay for many playoff-less years in the dark ages of Buccaneer football, and it was great to see those guys rewarded for their loyalty, for sticking around, for their level of play. And it's good to see Will Golston get one more year with the Buccaneers. It just wouldn't be the same without him. This is Will with my wife, Ashley, and my kids from yesteryear. This is a couple years ago. Caden, Jillian, Logan, and Ellie, along with my wife, Ashley. Just a great guy. He is a glue guy, Matt. You have to talk with him for years in the locker room. Always a great guy to go to when it comes to getting quotes about other players, helping us with stories from that aspect. Always willing to talk. But more importantly, staying on this team because he's still getting the job done at age 33. He can still make some of those splash plays, do the dirty work, and run defense. And just a guy that has been a mentor to some of these younger players, Marquise Watts, Jose Ramirez, Chris Braswell. Logan Hall has been singing his praises for the last couple of years. It's good to see Will Golston back on the team, at least we hope and we think.
Yeah, at this point of Will's career, I think he knows that he's there to just be a mentor for everybody, because we all love the interception that he had against the Bills last season.
Right.
Like an iconic play that I'll remember
He loved
for
it
a
too.
long time. Yeah, it was super cool, but he's more of a rotational guy now. I think the most we're going to see him is if there is an injury that happens to Logan Hall or someone else. But that doesn't mean that he can't provide value to this Buccaneers team. I mean, I think that's why we'll see a couple of veteran guys on the practice squad as well, kind of being a mentor to specific players at certain positions where they might need a little pep in their step, a little moving along with the help of, a veteran there. So Will's such a likable guy. You can pretty much talk to him about anything. I know he's a big UFC guy, and I've talked to him about, those areas of, things that he likes to watch and do. So, he's one of the longest tenured Bucs on the team, really, outside of Levante. I think he holds a special place with Bucs fans. They appreciate him being there through the rough times and now getting to enjoy the fruits of his labor as well, with a lot of winning teams in that Super Bowl in 2020.
Yeah,
so
and he's just he's just a great guy. And we have some great guys and gals as Pewter Report TV channel members. We want to give a shout out to our new Pewter Report TV channel members from Saturday night: Josh, Mark Alonzo, Vice, Brandon Tampa fan, Edward Claringbold, Spencer Nobles, No Mercy, Growing Up Killings, Grace Point, Philip Trippy, and Scott Dam. Thank you so much for becoming Pewter Report TV channel members. Now, those were gifted on Saturday night, so we greatly appreciate the support of all of our Pewter Report TV channel members, and we certainly want to give out a shout to our Pewter Platinum channel members, Guru, Scott Federico, and Parformance 2, as well as our Pewter Premium channel members. And Trucker Brian just leveled up from a Pewter People membership to a Pewter Premium or Pewter Premier member. So we greatly appreciate all of our Pewter Premier channel members. And if you are interested in showing your support for Pewter Report in other ways, aside from just subscribing to Pewter Report TV, as we're on our way to 15,300, we've really grown remarkably fast here in the month of August, thanks to you guys. Or if you want to leave a comment or maybe give us a thumbs up, those are some ways you can help us, because doing those things helps boost our video on the YouTube algorithm, gets us in front of more awesome Pewter Report wannabe fans, guys, that you could help us bring to the table, convert them from just Buccaneer fans that don't know about us to Pewter Report podcast viewers. But then there's also another way you can do that, and that is with a Pewter Report channel membership. That's the way you can show your support for Pewter Report TV. Simply click on the join button on the front page, or you can click on the description below in this video here. There's 4 different membership levels starting at $3.99. Everybody gets loyalty badges and custom emojis, early access to videos for our Pewter Pro members, exclusive Pewter Insider Q&As that Matt and I do Fridays. Those are for our Pewter Premier and Pewter Platinum members. And then Pewter Platinum members that have a standing with us for 3 months or more get free Pewter Report merchandise, as well as twice annual Platinum member meetups in Tampa with a couple of Bucs personnel people. So it's going to be fun. We're looking forward to doing that in the off season, and then we'll do another one at training camp next year. So it's a great way for our Pewter Platinum members to get even a little bit more. So those are some ways that you can help support our efforts at Pewter Report, and we greatly appreciate everybody who's become a channel member so far.
Yes, we do. Can't thank you guys enough. Really appreciate all your contributions, and thanks for being fans of the show. We couldn't do it without you guys. So thank you very much. Got a couple of super chats to get to, like right before and after roll call. So let's start out with Rev Fish. Thanks for this $4.99 super chat. Who says, wide receiver, running back, O-line, D-line, cornerback, safety, all look strong. Kyle Trask better. Y'all seem to have confidence in outside linebacker / defensive end. What do you think might keep us from the playoffs?
Injuries. I think that's the biggest thing. Injuries.
Yeah.
There's a lot of winnable games this year. right? I mean, the Buccaneers play some of the toughest teams in the league, right? We're talking about Super Bowl champion Kansas City, Super Bowl contender San Francisco, who was in the game and lost again to the Chiefs. They play the Ravens, they play the Lions, teams that were runners up in those conferences. And the NFC South has gotten a little bit better. I think Atlanta's going to be a better team, better than 7-9, or 7-10, I should say. Are they going to be 9 wins, 10 wins, 11, 12 wins? We'll see. But there are some winnable games, I think, on Tampa Bay's schedule. And I think as long as this team stays healthy, they're focused, they're hungry, they're experienced, I think, at a lot of positions. And when you look at the offense, I think it's leveled up, Matt, with Liam Cohen to the table. So Todd Bowles, in his pre-training camp interview with me, said, just give me a lead. Let me get into my bag of tricks, right? Give me a lead, and I can make some things happen. And what he means by that is, look what happened to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They lost 30-12, right? Bucs got an early lead, and it was a long day for Jacksonville. Same thing up in Green Bay. The Buccaneers got a lead. They demolished the Packers up there in Lambeau. Same thing with the Eagles, right? Got an early lead in that game. Bowles got into his bag of tricks. And I think that's where he shines as a defensive play caller, because he doesn't have to play safe and conservative. Now he's got somebody on the opposite side of the field, on the offensive side, with Liam Cohen, who's kind of on his level, Matt.
No question about it. I think Bowles, in years past, we've gotten angry where he's just like afraid of allowing the big play. And so everything's underneath. And that's why like backup quarterbacks and third strings could kind of dink and dunk against the Buccaneers. But I just don't see that this year. Because even like, I don't know, I was trying to rack my brain for reasons why the Bucs won't be successful this year, like outside of injuries, because I think you could say that about like a fair number of teams. Defensively, I don't see much of like where there's going to be an issue. Like, yes, outside linebacker getting the job done where they didn't last year is something to like pay attention to. But again, the Bucs were still top 10 last year and getting after the quarterback. So even if it doesn't pan out exactly the way that the Bucs want to, Bowles is going to dial up different blitzes. I think I think obviously safety is better with Jordan Whitehead there next to Antoine Winfield Jr. I think corner isn't necessarily going to have a drop off, and you have a better backup this time around, I would say. And even if linebacker, like we know what Levante David's going to bring. If KJ Britt isn't up to task, we have Servase Dennis in there. And we really like what we've seen from J.J. Russell. So really the only two things I could see kind of holding the Bucs back, besides injuries, which obviously is very warranted, is, making sure Baker Mayfield doesn't regress from a season that he had a year ago. And I don't really foresee that happening. And two, just how long it takes for Graham Barton to, feel comfortable as the every game center, just because, teams are going to exploit him first and foremost. And everyone knows the old saying, you're only as strong as your weakest link on the offensive line. So I think Graham Barton, when we kind of talked last week about some protection issues of communication and where to make the proper slides, I think that's important for beginning of the season, but I'm sure will be ironed out, really by before they even reach November. So there's not many things that should hold this team back.
I agree. And I think with Graham Barton, the Dolphins' backup offense, or I should say defensive line, was in the game, and you would expect Tampa Bay starting offensive line to treat them like the JV squad that they were and march down the field, and they did. They got after him in the running game. They held up in pass protection, and Graham Barton looked phenomenal. Luke Gedeke planted and buried first-round pick Chop Robinson 9 yards down the field on the first play of the game. You talk about setting the tone. I'm telling you, man, we saw that coming, Matt. We at the joint practice on Wednesday. Luke Gedeke just manhandled Chop Robinson and just buried him into the ground. And I was thinking to myself, I'd love to see him do that on Saturday night. And he did, or Friday night. And he did. And that was certainly a welcome sign. And, we were not big Chop Robinson fans in the pre-draft. No. He was queued to the Buccaneers in a couple of these mock drafts. We never had him in our mock draft. I did not like him against the run. And for that reason, he just doesn't have the size to hold up, and he got manhandled, I thought, in the run, and even got manhandled as on pass protection by a tight end on his pass rush. So good showing by Luke Edeke in this offensive line.
Oh, yeah, they looked great. Obviously, the starters on the defensive line looked great, too.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone's seen that video of Vita Vea pushing the center back and stopping that run play. So a lot of good things in the trenches. Let's keep the super chats rolling in. Thanks to Gerald Strahan for this $4.99 super chat, talking about the wide receivers. Says, who are the other 3 receivers you see making this team and why?
Well, I think and we'll get to this in just a second. We'll talk about all of the players that we feel should make the 53-man roster. But since you asked the question here and it's a super chat, we're going to answer it. We have no choice but to. So I think obviously we start with Mike Evans, number 1, Chris Godwin, number 2, Jalen McMillan, number 3. And then you've got Trey Palmer. I think he's done enough to make this team, even though he had a very inconsistent camp catching the ball. But there's enough there. They like his speed. Even if he's a decoy, that's, he has some value there. He'll be the punt returner, is what it looks like. He's number 4. I think the other 2 are Cody Thompson and Cameron Johnson. Those 2 have been the most consistent. And I think with Johnson, it's the electric playmaking ability that he brings to the table. Cody Thompson is kind of that steady Eddie as a wide receiver, 6'2", 209 pounds. He brings a little bit more size to the table, which is good. He quickly earned the trust of Kyle Trask. He just presents himself as an open and catchable target. And then when the ball's thrown to him, he catches it. So I think those are the 3 wide receivers that end up sticking.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. I mean, electric factory with Cameron Johnson. Returning ability, I think, will be very exciting if he gets an opportunity. Obviously, it's slated more towards, Trey Palmer, and we saw Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker back there on kickoffs. And Cody Thompson, he's great in coverage. So to bring it back to, Sterling Shepard, who a lot of people were talking about today, it just always made more sense for Sterling Shepard to be on the practice squad when he doesn't play special teams, understandably so. He's 31 years old, he's on a new team and everything like that. But he can still impart that veteran wisdom from the practice squad, while the other guys, it'd be like, especially Cameron Johnson, that's a huge risk if you put him on the practice squad. There's no guarantee he's going to stay there. So the Bucs almost had to make that move. But I'm in full agreement. I think those are the next couple of guys that should make it.
Yep. Wasp says, not a fan of Chop either, but I'm a fan of Celsius. I tell you, Matt, we have got these Pewter people, and I say that not just for our Pewter Report channel members, but everybody who contributes to the show here. We can just call it a day. We can let them run the show because they were on point about the roll call, and now Wasp is calling for the Celsius commercial. So you guys are on top of it. Greatly appreciate that. And just like we appreciate the energy that we get, Matt, every morning when we drink a Celsius.
Of course, Celsius is the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. There's so many awesome flavors of Celsius, including those you see on the screen with the sparkling watermelon lemonade and the sparkling kiwi strawberry as well. So tons of great flavors. If you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, head on over to the Celsius store locator on their website. You can punch in your address and it'll tell you the closest geographical location where you can pick one up. Could be a Walmart, a health and fitness store, a Publix, a Piggly Wiggly, or it could be your bodega.
Bodega.
And once you keep going to your bodega and you know you love Celsius and you want more and you want to buy it in bulk, you can buy it in bulk over on Amazon. Click on the subscribe and save, and you can have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. You're in charge. You're the captain. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. By the way, we have a new channel member to get to. Thank you to Sean McGinty. Shout out to you, Sean.
Appreciate that, Sean.
Thank you for joining Pewter Report, the Pewter Report YouTube channel membership. And then you had a couple of comments as well. Let's see. I saw you in here a moment ago. Sean then follows that up with making a live show for a change. That is super awesome. I know it's not easy for everybody to get there at 4 p.m. Sean also says, I'll be drinking orange Celsius tomorrow at 4 a.m. on the way to the airport. Definitely a great way to start your day, especially if you're traveling. Hope you have safe travel. And Sean finishes it up with, I'm hoping Cephas Johnson makes the practice squad. I like his size. He is a big dude for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know that he's going to make the practice squad. I think Ryan Miller's got a pretty good chance of making the practice squad. He did some nice things, had a 10-yard touchdown
Yeah.
Race Point, one of our Pewter Report TV channel members, Bodega. There you go.
And speaking of Sean going to the airport, obviously traveling to another destination, we had great people from great destinations all around the world today for our roll call. So just want to give a quick shout out to a couple of people. David Melnick from Alligator Point, Florida. BB King, South Tampa. Paul Bowen, Prattville, Alabama. Now we're going a little international with Alexander Wynn, watching from Brisbane, Australia. That is super cool to see.
Very cool.
Michael from Black Forest, Germany. Joseph back in the States with Southern California. Kathy Gillespie from Zephyr Hills in Florida. Back to Germany. Daniel in Stuttgart, Germany. AJ from Orlando. Yo Cohen watching from Israel. Wow. Jacko Bluntly, Nassau, Bahamas. We were in Nassau in Jacksonville 2 weeks ago. And of course, Nassau County is on Long Island as well. So a lot of Nassaus out there. And last but not least, Carl watching from Nashville. So thank you guys all so much, guys and gals, I should say, for all your participation. And we'll end it with Sean watching in Raleigh, North Carolina. Everyone watching from all over the place. We love to see it. And thank you guys so much.
Absolutely. We have a question here from Grace Point, one of our Pewter Report TV channel members. Appreciate you very much. So who has been cut so far? I just updated the list here. J.C. Allen, former Pewter reporter, has mentioned a couple of new names. Tanner Tala, the Bucs tight end. Neither of these are a surprise, really. And Marcus Banks. Banks flashed certainly in the preseason, but a little bit more of a one-trick pony at safety than Christian Izien. And so I think that's kind of why Izien looks like he might stick. We don't want to say anything, too concrete right now because we just don't know. The team has not finalized their roster cuts just yet. But let's put up that graphic again here. I just updated it. And there it is. Let's see. Is that right? Yes. Marcus Banks is on there. Tanner Tala is on there. We will get rid of this banner. And that's it. So Ramon Jefferson, running back, Tanner Canoe, Latrell Jones, Raleigh Webb, Cephas Johnson, Sterling Shepard. Those are 5 wide receivers that have been cut. 3 tight ends, David Wells, Sal Cannella, Tanner Tala. Offensive linemen, Xavier Delgado and Ryan Johnson. Defensive lineman, Judge Culpepper, Mike Green, CJ Brewer, Brandon Madison. Inside linebacker, Kalen DeLoach. Outside linebacker, Jay Person. Outside linebacker, Sean Peterson and Daniel Griesiak. Cornerbacks, Andrew Hayes, Chris McDonald, safety Marcus Banks, punter Nolan Cooney, and Zach Triner, the long snapper, was cut in favor of Evan Deckers. And then, of course, 2 guys that we expect to be put on injured reserve, Raheem Jarrett, the wide receiver, Chase Edmonds, the running back. It looks like those 2 guys will be removed from the roster and put on an injured reserve. And we'll see what their status is for a return. They might come back on the practice squad, right? They might come back on the active roster later in the year. We'll see what happens with injuries, but they're going to miss at least the first 4 games of the season. And, that's where things stand right now. I think that the interesting thing is the inside linebacker position, because there's a lot of guys that are still on the team that, including Antonio Greer Jr., who was at USF for 5 years and then went to Arkansas. And he made a big splash play. He had 8 tackles against the Jaguars, was the leading tackler in Jacksonville against the Jaguars in the second preseason game. Then he had a big splash play, a scoop and score off of an Ernest Brown sack fumble, or so we thought. They took another look at that, and Ernest Brown's play, which was actually a hell of a good play, it was just ruled an incomplete pass. And that ended up being on 4th down. So it certainly was good to see the Buccaneers defense get off the field. There was the play right there. But it was not a fumble recovery and a scoop and score for Antonio Greer. But, Matt, it shows up on tape. It shows what can be. And then Greer did have an interception. So he did create a turnover later in the game and help finish off the Miami Dolphins on Friday night. So, he's in contention with Vi Jones, J.J. Russell. Those are some players. Let's go ahead and get to our list, shall we? Because this is today's topic, is who we think should make the team. Tomorrow we will have Pewter Reports at 4 o'clock, Pewter Report podcast. Bucs finalized the 53-man roster, so we'll have the full rundown with all of the roster moves that the team makes between now and tomorrow at 4 o'clock. But today is who we think should make the roster. Let's start on the offense, Matt. Now, this is interesting because Matt and I agreed with this. It's a little departure from what the Bucs have done in the past, because this would be 23 offensive players and 27 defensive players. So, but let's take a look at this, Matt. 2 quarterbacks, we think Mayfield and Trask make it. 3 running backs, Rashad White, Bucky Irving, and Sean Tucker. We think 6 receivers, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, Trey Palmer, Cody Thompson, and Cameron Johnson. But then at tight end and offensive line, we shortened those positions a little bit. But it doesn't mean that they can't have a guy like Keeft, who we didn't have on this roster, be on the practice squad, or a guy like Brandon Walton, who we didn't have on the roster, be on the practice squad, that could come over at a moment's notice.
Yeah, like Keeft was a guy specifically when I was writing up one part of this overall roster. I originally had him on, but then the math didn't work out to keep only 53. So then I was looking at people that kind of had to be taken off, and Keeft was kind of the first one on the chopping block. I know he has a role on special teams. I don't think he's been as like flawless as, some people think that Keeft is like on special teams.
Yeah.
The Bucs haven't really been lauded for their great special teams coverage over the past couple of years. Now it's very different. They have a new special teams coach and everything like that. But if there is a spot where they can get away with less guys, I think it is tight end, just because of Cohen coming in and not as much 2 tight end sets. If they wanted to go with 2 tight ends, they could also use an offensive lineman like School as an extra tight end. So I think that's kind of where you can get away with 3 tight ends than maybe other years past. And then the offensive line, again, it comes down to some of the versatility. We talked about it with Klein earlier, moving to tackle in a pinch when he had to. I think School you have as like the main offensive tackle if something happens to Tristan Wirfs and Luke Gedeke. I mean, we saw School playing there when Wirfs was still finishing up his contract negotiations. So I actually really like the depth on the offensive line. Like, obviously, if every single starting lineman gets hurt, you're kind of screwed no matter what.
That's
but
anybody.
In terms of, that's anyone. But in terms of like, if I like Robert Hainsey coming in to start if something happens to Barton or maybe one of the other guards. And, Klein, I'm excited about the longer the season goes and the more he's able to develop behind the scenes. So I don't hate the depth at offensive line for the Bucs.
Yeah, and I think maybe the thing where Walton might have an advantage and why he might stick, again, this is who we believe should make the team based upon what Matt and I have seen in training camp and all 3 preseason games. This is our 53, not what the Buccaneers may or may not do. But I agree with Matt that Haggard, he can play right tackle for sure. He probably can't play left, but you do have Schooley who can play left tackle, right? And if something happens to Tristan Wirfs or Schooley, they're going to go out and probably get another offensive lineman that's going to add some depth there. And there's a chance Brandon Walton, who really struggled in pass protection, really bad.
Yeah,
he might be on the practice squad. He definitely needs some work. I think he's regressed as a pass protector because I didn't remember him being as bad as he was. But with Haggard, you have a guy that can play guard and did it exceptionally well against the Bengals. Then he missed the Jaguars game and then came back and I thought played really well. He can also play right tackle as well. So you have some position flexibility there. I could see the Buccaneers, just because Walton has game experience, go with Walton and put Haggard in the practice squad. But I'm with Matt on this. I think Haggard has had a better camp and a better preseason and deserves to be on the 53.
Yeah, hopefully can stay healthy, but performance-wise, I don't think there's any question about it.
So again, a little lopsided, 23 offensive players, 27 defensive players. But I think the reason why, though, is, Matt, is because the last, 5 guys on this roster, right, 53, 52, 51, 50, 49, 48, those are guys that are going to be playing special teams. Yeah. And this is where a guy like an inside linebacker or number 5 or an outside linebacker, number 6, makes it over tight end 4 in this case, like Keeft, right? So I think that's kind of where this is a little bit more lopsided towards the defense. And remember, the kickoff coverage is more like a defensive play than it is that traditional special teams play where you're running 40 yards down the field to make a tackle. So, Matt, if you want to read off the names here for our audio podcast listeners for defensive line all the way through.
Yeah, so the depth chart for the defense, again, who we think should be on the team, not necessarily what Tampa Bay has decided. Defensive tackle, Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey, Greg Gaines, Logan Hall, Will Golston, and Ernest Brown. Outside linebackers, we're keeping 6. We're going Yaya Diaby, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Anthony Nelson, Chris Braswell, the second-round pick, Jose Ramirez, and Marquise Watts. Linebacker, inside linebacker, we're keeping 5. Levante David, KJ Britt, Servassier Dennis, JJ Russell, and Vi Jones. And then we're keeping 10 defensive backs. So Jamel Dean, Zion McCollum at corner, Antoine Winfield Jr. and Jordan Whitehead, they'll start at safety. Tykee Smith, Bryce Hall, Kayvon Merriweather, Tavier Thomas, Tyreek Funderburk, and Christian Izien rounding out that group. So a little more extra guys on this side, I think, especially because you want to cover all your bases with, especially the defensive backfield with all those corners that either have an injury history or Funderburk's hurt right now, so you kind of want to make sure you're good there. I think the defensive line, too, given the injury history of Cansey last year and, Vita Vea is getting a little bit older.
Right.
I think it's important to kind of be beefed up there as well. And then outside linebacker, just in my opinion, they're all deserving of just being on this team because they all played really well this training camp.
Yeah. And just like John Spytek said when he was on our Pewter Report podcast, he doesn't like letting good pass rushers walk out the door. And you've got Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and Anthony Nelson both in a contract year this year. So 1 or 2 or maybe none, maybe all those guys return. Maybe both of them return. Maybe one returns, maybe none out of those 2 guys. But you want to build for the future and keep investing time and reps into Jose Ramirez, who took a big leap this preseason. Marquise Watts, who stepped up as someone who could set the edge, play the run. We know he can rush the passer. He had a good sack and a couple of good rushes against Jacksonville. But he also plays special teams. He's a core special teamer. So I think those are the guys that really deserve to make the team. And, if there's going to be a position that might be paired on the defensive side, keeping 5 outside linebackers might be a little rich. But J.J. Russell, I think, earned the trust of the coaches last year and this year. And Vi Jones, he got a lot of playing time. He's got a tackle lower, but he flashes, man. And he also plays on teams as well. So he's a player the Buccaneers may decide to chop off and put on the practice squad. But I'm with Matt. We've seen enough. We would take a chance on keeping him, especially with Levante David and KJ Britt both being in contract years.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with J.J. Russell off this training camp. So for me, it was pretty easy to put him on the active roster, in my opinion. And Jones has splashed and shined in certain areas. But let's get to the super chat from Meets McGee. Thanks for this $5 super chat. It says, as for William Golston, Todd Bowles saved his career. I always felt he didn't fit as a 4-3 end.
Yeah, I think with him, he's certainly moved around, right? As I think he's got the body to be a 3-4 defensive end or defensive lineman, as Casey Rogers calls him. He's a great fit. Remember when this team drafted Vita Vea, they were a 4-3 defense. Vita Vea is the ultimate 3-4 nose tackle. So some of these players, maybe they were drafted, in a little bit of foresight with Todd Bowles coming. Maybe there's like a little bit of crystal ball, reading going on. But he's certainly been a player that has been a very good fit in this Todd Bowles 3-4 defense, just like Vita Vea, who I think could have been a good fit in a 4-3, but is an ideal fit as a 3-4 defensive nose tackle. And certainly in the 4-man rush, he's a player that you have to account for as well.
I feel like Todd Bowles doesn't typically steer his players in the wrong direction. And again, it's good that Will's here for the long haul and looking like he's going to be here for another season for sure.
I agree. Folks, we want to tell you about our new partnership with Autograph. If you've heard of Autograph, which is Fandom Rewarded, it's a free app on the App Store for Apple and also for Google Play for Android users. What it is it's a company that's co-founded by Tom Brady, Bucs legendary Super Bowl quarterback. He also played for the Patriots, I think. Well, he co-founded this company in the belief that devotion should be rewarded and the future of the fandom belongs to the fans. Here's the gist of it. Download the apps. They're free. They're free to download, free to use. All of our Pewter Report content is on the app. So if you're one of those Pewter people that have said, we'd love to see Pewter Report come out with an app, we're not coming out with an app, but you can find all of our stuff on Autograph, one of our partners. Read Pewter Report news, watch the Pewter Report videos and podcasts, get rewarded in one free app. That's right. Use the promo code Pewter when you sign up. You're going to get rewarded. You're going to earn points. Whenever you read stories, you'll earn points when you watch the Pewter Report podcast on the Autograph app. Then you can cash those points in for merchandise, for tickets to games, etc. It's a great way to get rewarded just for being a fan reading the Pewter Report content. There's also content from other media outlets as well when it comes to Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's say you're a big Kansas State fan like me. I've got my Kansas State list, and it's got all of the Kansas State content on there as well. So if you're a big college football fan, a big NFL fan, fans of other teams, this is the place to go to get all of your news. They've got up-to-date live scores as well. It's a fantastic app. It's free. Download it, the App Store or Google Play, and make sure you use promo code Pewter when you sign up to use Autograph.
Well, we have a big week coming up. Bucs will have practice tomorrow and on Wednesday. So now it's back to kind of a regular type of regular season schedule, I guess I should say. Yep. And we will finally know the 53-man roster. So tomorrow's title is Bucs finalize the 53-man roster. We'll get the full team. We'll get Todd Bowles' thoughts about the roster and some of those tough decisions that were made and all of that good stuff. And we'll kind of, break down all of the roster tomorrow as well for who officially makes the team.
Yep. And for these players that are going to be making the team, they're going to be making some money. And the best place to invest your money is with the folks over at Immuni Financial.
At Immuni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Dude,
congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you? Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Immuni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
That's right. At Immuni Financial, managing your family's wealth means more than just allocating your assets. At Immuni Financial, it means legacy planning, brokerage and advisory services, retirement accounts, college savings accounts, and insurance services. With over 40 years of experience, let Immuni Financial help you plan ahead and stay ahead. Give them a call at 1-800-868-6864 or visit them on the web at immuni.com. I highly recommend them. I got most of my financial assets with Immuni Financial. Tremendous people over there. We have a tremendous person who just subscribed and became a new Pewter Report TV channel member, John Close. Yep. Thanks so much. We greatly appreciate that. That's fantastic. Almost as fantastic as the content that you're going to find at pewterreport.com, Matt.
That is very, very true as we get very close to the regular season, 13 days away, perfectly on cue with Mike Evans in the graphic. But if you're not already doing so, please make sure you follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to become a Pewter Report channel member as well, that would be great. But we got tons of content coming up. And we also want to give a shout out to Bill Devers, who just became a YouTube member. That is awesome to see at the end of the show. Thank you very, very much, Bill. And yeah, make sure you follow us on all of our social media and our YouTube channel. Please leave a comment on this video below. We will respond to it as well.
Yep.
And big week coming up as the Bucs have some more practices before the start of the regular season. So that's going to do it for us on today's show. For Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.